Alrighty guys, today we are here to talk about an absolutely legendary icon, and that is Saint Hildegard von Bingen, or known as Saint Hildegard of the Rhine. Saint Hildegard was alive almost 1,000 years ago, which is pretty crazy to think about, right? 1,000 years ago. So, bang, 1098 to 1178. That is when our girl Hildegard was alive, 1,000 years after Christ. And 1,000 years after that, all of her music and all of her ideas and writings are still very much being circulated, studied, and listened to. In fact, you can actually find all of Saint Hildegard's music on YouTube. Someone has, kind of redone them. They've been performing them again, and if you really enjoy not so much super Gregorian Latin kind of chanting that we're all familiar with when we think of like church music, but just really interesting and almost eerie, but still really beautiful and meditative music, definitely check out St. Hildegard's music. I would actually recommend the Canticles of Ecstasy album first. It is a lovely, lovely album. Fun fact, I also am actually a part of the Order of St. Hildegard, which is an interfaith organization, and as a chaplaincy candidate specifically, I am learning to become a spiritual leader, an accredited chaplain. A chaplain is essentially kind of like a travel priest in a way, right? Where it's like, I don't necessarily have my own church or anything, like I'm not a priest, but I am the person who, gets called into the hospitals or on a boat or something, places where you cannot take the physical building of a church to you. That is what I am training to be and what I hope to be, because I am learning leadership skills and other really important things with them to continue to do the best I can for my online communities. So if you guys want to support a fantastic organization, definitely check them out. They do take donations. You can also become a member and join them for all of their member activities. They do a lot of really great work, spreading, interfaith, leadership, resources, trauma-informed care, all this other kinds of stuff, and they are really, really, really just a great bunch of people, so check them out if you'd like to. But all that aside, we hear a lot about her these days, and especially in Christian witch circles, a lot of people talk about her as if she's an important figure, and some people may not be familiar with her because obviously, she wasn't a universal figure. She was an abbess from now present-day Germany, right by the Rhine, and her history and her story is so fascinating and so full of twists and turns. So first, let's start off with St. Hildegard's early life. So when we talk about St. Hildegard, the first thing that we need to understand is that actually, yes, she is a visionary. She received direct revelation from God. This is part of what makes her a saint, right? Is that some of, these miracles include her just receiving these revelations from God, including at one point even being able to understand just all of the texts that, were ever written, all the holy books, all the, scriptures and things like that. With one striking vision, she managed to just, bang, understand it all, right? Instantly. And she describes it as like this kind of thunderbolt coming down and hitting her and just lighting her up with light. And it didn't burn, but it was warm, right? And with that, she suddenly just knew. She understood everything. So Saint Hildegard had been having these visions since she was about 3 years old. However, because she was the 10th child of, a peasant family, that means that, unfortunately, that peasant family did give her up because they didn't have the money, they didn't have the resources to take care of her properly, so instead they dedicated St. Hildegard to the church. And up until that point, she kept her visions a secret, and she still did for even many years after that, but she ended up, at around 8 years old, coming under the tutelage of a person named Jutta, who was actually an anchoress. Now here's a crazy side note about anchors and anchoresses. What is that? What it is somebody who was basically almost like St. John the Baptist level, but like even more extreme somehow, where it was an ascetic lifestyle, where they shut themselves off from society. So Jutta here, this anchoress, she literally lived in like probably a room, maybe very, very tiny room, just enough for her to like sleep in and sit in. And the only way that she would, get any kind of interaction with the outside world was, first of all, right, she had a window that connected her to the church so she could still hear the services, and that was also the window in which she received her food. These people in these positions, they would spend their entire lives dedicated to solitary work, right, like embroidering, weaving, things they could do by themselves, to prayer, meditation, contemplation, completely isolated from other people. But when it came time for, St. Hildegard to learn things, Jutta was allowed to teach her, and Jutta also ended up attracting a few other girls, right? She ended up being so famous for her dedication as an anchoress that other women and other girls kind of flocked to her, hoping to learn more about this kind of religious devotion about God from her. And so the only people for a long time that St. Hildegard ever told about her visions was Jutta and also the monk Volmar. But, so many, many years pass, all of this stuff goes on, eventually, Jutta dies, which actually, again, because being an anchor or an anchoress was so severe, she actually had her last rites read to her when she started doing that. When she first confined herself to that, that's when her last rites were written. She was basically dead to society. But eventually she did actually die as well, and that left St. Hildegard at age 38, so a good 30 years later, to now take all of the women and girls that had gathered around Jutta to learn with her, and become kind of something of an abbess over what was basically becoming a convent. St. Hildegard did continue learning, however, because she felt that Jutta, was trying to teach her, but she just wasn't getting enough, right? She wanted to learn to read more, to write more. She wanted to do all kinds of things, and especially as the visions kept coming, she had just more things that she needed to do, right? And so as St. Hildegard became essentially an abbess of this new monastery, she started having people write things for her, especially if she couldn't quite convey them herself in writing that easily. But she got pretty good at also, writing herself, doing all kinds of stuff, putting out incredible, incredible ideas. St. Hildegard also was around during the time where, the church was kind of getting broken up and split up. There was a lot of controversy, a lot of people breaking off into new ideas, and she really didn't like that. She really didn't like that a lot of people were basically just saying some radical, weird stuff for clout. She wanted her stuff to be backed up by the Catholic Church. She wanted to be recognized by the Catholic Church. And so she worked really hard to do all kinds of interesting stuff, to, write helpful guides. One of her most helpful things was actually Physica, which was the Book of Simple Medicine, in which she catalogs pretty handily a good amount of herbs and their uses and also their dangers, right? So not only how they heal, but how they poison. In a time where Greek medicine was still very popular, and where Hildegard herself even was drawing on Greek medicine with, the 4 humors and all these other kinds of things that really we know now are scientifically bunk. That was a big deal. That was a big deal to say, hey, these plants do these things to the body, and they're very helpful. Even herbalists now can look at her work and see that there is still a lot of value in it today, because she put in that work. But another thing that's really fascinating is that St. Hildegard also didn't feel that she was worthy of picking up this mantle of going on this task of sharing her visions, not until she was 42. And she even says that she ignored the call for a long, long time to start sharing her visions, until God literally just flattened her, laid her out and got her pretty sick, and drew her down enough that he could come to her and be like, hey, listen, you need to start speaking, you need to start sharing these things. And it was at that point where St. Hildegard realized, I can't stay silent anymore, right? Which is a little relatable, honestly. And it's kind of comforting to know that someone like St. Hildegard, who 1,000 years later we know about and love so much, could also experience that imposter syndrome, right? Nobody is immune to imposter syndrome, not even saints who are receiving, actual visions from God. Who would have thought, right? But because of that push, she did go and continue speaking. She had all kinds of really interesting claims and really interesting talking points that even today would be considered pretty cutting edge, I feel like, especially stuff about women in this time of women's purity. I believe I did hear that, at one point St. Hildegard was like, no, girls should be able to have some fun by themselves, if you catch my meaning, right? So that alone was pretty radical. In this day, even still, for some people, never mind 1,000 years ago. But these are the kinds of things she was saying. She was also saying that not only herbs are useful for medicine, but also crystals. So whenever you hear modern Christians say things like crystals are demonic, let them know that St. Hildegard 1,000 years ago already kind of capped him. Already kind of said nope. Because according to St. Hildegard, crystals have the power to terrify the devil, because the beauty, the light of God is within them, because they are God's creation. And the devil cannot stand the sight of these beautiful things that remind him of what he had and lost when he fell. And also, he does not like them because they are full of fire and all this stuff. They are made out of fire, which reminds the devil, apparently, of, all the punishments to come in hell, right? So, according to St. Hildegard, these crystals, yes, they are very spiritually powerful, and they are very good for medicine, because, again, there was no germ theory back then, and people didn't realize that illness is not caused by ghosts and demons, it's caused by germs, right? They didn't know that, so St. Hildegard has some very interesting cures using crystals. One of them was really interesting, was the use of emerald. If someone is having some kind of malaise, some kind of fit, like, say, epilepsy, she said to put the emerald in your mouth, and once the fit had passed, to take it out and, recite a prayer over and over again to eventually be cured of this condition, right? To really meditate, study that crystal, and speak this affirmation, this prayer over and over and over again to be cured of this malady. Obviously, we know that this is not how epilepsy works now. We understand that you can't just, and in fact probably should not, put a rock in the mouth of somebody who's actively seizing. That just seems like a bad idea, but this was something that she recommended, and in fact, given that she herself often had these kinds of fits with her visions, which people may believe are some kind of epilepsy or seizure, maybe this is where she got the idea from. Maybe this helped her to some extent. Maybe it didn't. Who knows? But that's just one example of something that she put forward to help people cure themselves with crystals. She believed that they aligned people's energies more, and she would speak about, the elements fire, earth, air, and water, as well as their qualities. As per Greek medicine, she would mention the humors per Greek medicine, and that how crystals could help people align these humors, and that they were not only good spiritual tools, but physical ones as well. And so over the course of her lifetime, she was such a powerhouse. She would talk to all kinds of different people, give all kinds of different people such wild advice, and she was not afraid either to punch up, right? So when she went out speaking, she was not afraid at all to criticize the leadership of the church, any corruption that she saw. She was not afraid to criticize the male leadership, especially, and how they kind of just boxed women out of the conversation. She is right up there with, like, any of the other mystics, right? Like Julian of Norwich or any of the other ones, and she was brazen. In fact, Matthew Fox, in his book Hildegard of Bingen, A Saint for Our Times, he mentions that actually, when we think about a mystic, when we think about a prophet and all these things, he says that a prophet is just a mystic out to cause trouble. And frankly, if that doesn't describe St. Hildegard, I don't know what does, because she was absolutely a mystic, having mystic experiences. She was going out there, getting these direct revelations from God, things to say, things to share, things to teach, and she was going out there and very loudly, boldly, and unabashedly criticizing the corruption and the mess that she saw where she saw it. So, and obviously, she even kind of, unfortunately, met something of a prophet's end, almost, where she got so deep in her criticism, she got so, inflamed and so, just unafraid to call out nonsense where she saw it, that she did get excommunicated for a minute. She got officially excommunicated and spent some of the last few years of her life in excommunication, without her abbess, without her spiritual community anymore. And it was only in the last couple years of her life that they reversed that excommunication and welcomed her back into the church. Knowing from, Anathema Maranatha what a very serious thing excommunication is, how it is essentially functioning like a curse, that was a big deal. That was a very big deal for St. Hildegard to have experienced that and to have been shunned so heavily, especially when she wanted nothing more but for her teachings to be a part of the church, to strengthen the church. So the fact that it was reversed is great, but even then, after she died, it took centuries for her to be recognized by the church for her work. It wasn't until 2012 when St. Benedict the 16th, I believe, actually finally canonized her as an official saint, right? Just like any of the other saints, St. Valentine, St. Joseph, everyone else, canonized as an official saint, and also coined a Doctor of the Church, which that title in itself is very important because all doctors are saints, but not all saints are doctors. A Doctor of the Church is somebody who shows holiness, eminence, and puts forward work or writings or some kind of teaching and rhetoric that absolutely grows and benefits the church as a body, right? Where they do and say things that are integral to the continuing development of the church and its theology, its understanding of God, its understanding of the world around them. It's a big deal. And with all of the books we have from St. Hildegard, right, like Physica and all these other ones that just were so important and impactful, I can't imagine that she would ever not get that title. It is one that absolutely suits her for all of the incredible work she's done as a polymath, right, as a musician, as a writer, all of that stuff. And so now, officially, her feast day, in fact, is on September 17th. So we missed it this year by a little bit, by a little margin, but, right, September, Virgo season is St. Hildegard's season. So, all in all, absolutely incredible. I don't have a physical copy of Matthew Fox's book. I would love to get one soon. But I do have this one that is actually in German. It's called Weisheit und göttliche Liebe, which means like, wisdom and godly love. And it's all about St. Hildegard. It's about her writings, her journals, and all that other kind of stuff, which, of course, I would have to brush up heavily on my German to make sense of this. But I do aspire to read this in German one day because I feel like, as a German woman herself, it's probably important to read things in her native language, or at least the modernization of her native language, right? Because 1,000 years ago, German is probably very different. But nonetheless, very fun stuff, a very important figure. With all that said, I hope that does give you a good overview of St. Hildegard von Bingen, and I will see you guys next time for a discussion on yet another angel. So, see you guys, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye! By the way, if you want to see these videos 2 weeks earlier, consider subscribing to my Patreon, where you not only get all these videos, but also recipe cards, specific deity profiles, and lots of other interesting things to look at. Video tiers start at $10 a month, so definitely consider checking it out.